Shalom, and welcome back to Bnei Noach Academy, Thoughts on the Torah. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. So, in Jewish tradition, the entire Torah, that's the 5 books of the Torah, is read in an annual cycle. Thus, every Shabbat, that's every Sabbath, another portion, which usually amounts to several chapters as we know them, the chapters in the Torah, another portion is read. That being the case, this recent weekend, that's this recent Shabbat, we concluded the first book in the Torah. And that is, we concluded the book of Genesis. And this coming Shabbat, which is the first Shabbat, the first Saturday of January 2024, we're going to read the first portion of the book of Exodus. Now let's focus in for a second on the very end of the book of Genesis. You see, the Talmud tells us, and besides, this even makes a lot of sense, that you always aim to end with something good, on a good note, a happy ending, or a good ending, a positive ending. In other words, you don't leave the end with something negative, something sad, something morbid. The end always has to be good, on whatever level. But however, when you look into the very last verse, let's even take the final 2 verses of the book of Genesis, the question is, what? This is how the Torah ends the entire book of the Reshit, of Genesis? Let's look at chapter 50, verse 25. Verse 25 is, Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, and he's saying, when God has taken notice of you, and God will take notice of you and take you out of the out of here, you shall take my remains with you, my bones, my remains with you. Then he concludes this book. God concludes this book with saying, Joseph died at the age of 110 years. They embalmed him, and he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. What kind of good ending is that? What kind of positive ending is that? It's very, very sad, because remember, we know that from when Joseph passes away, things started to turn. Everything took a turn. Everything took a nosedive. And very soon, well, after all, the rest of his brothers passed away, began the actual enslavement of the Jewish people, which we read about in the beginning of the book of Exodus. So what kind of positive note is this? Well, the positive note is that it's the ultimate positive note. Let me explain. You see, Joseph had all the power. Remember, not too long ago, just a few chapters ago, Jacob makes his son, that is Joseph, the ruler of Egypt, swear that he will carry his remains and bury him in the Holy Land. Joseph could have done the same. In fact, Joseph doesn't want to be buried in Egypt. Joseph is not buried in Egypt. To this very day, Joseph is buried in the Holy Land, in the city of Shechem. And Joseph knew that that is the ultimate burial site for himself. What he could have done is passed some kind of decree, some kind of edict that would have forced the Egyptians to allow his brethren, his nephews, his nieces, his family to carry his remains and bury him in Israel. Instead, what he did is he says, I am going to remain in a coffin. I'm going to remain in limbo. I am not going to be buried. Now, he knew, he had prophetic vision. He knew that this is not a matter of a year or two or, a couple of years. He knew that this is a matter of a few hundred years, just about 100, close to 200 years. And yet, he was ready to subject himself to this quote-unquote discomfort, as I'll explain in a moment, only to be there as a source of hope, to provide the family especially the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren that will come, the great-great-grandchildren that will come, that will not have had those posts, those goalposts like he had, like his brother had, of faith, of certainty that all will be well, because they heard it from their father, Jacob, who heard it from God, when God revealed himself to him, that don't worry. And they may lose hope, and they may need to have something to grab onto. He provided himself for that. He subjected himself to that. Let me explain what he subjected himself to. We know that God says to man in the beginning of the book of Genesis that you shall return to the earth, to the dust. And that is because you were taken from there, which tells us that in order for somebody to have true peace, as we say, rest in peace, in order for the soul to find its ultimate peace, the body has to be laid to rest properly. If it's not, whatever the reason may be, the soul does not have his ultimate peace. And here, Joseph was ready to subject himself to that discomfort, just to be there for the sole purpose of providing that comfort, that pillar of hope for the future generations until they leave Egypt. And this gives us an idea, something we should learn from. Of course, we don't have to subject ourselves to absolute agony and total discomfort, but we should learn from Joseph that one needs to even allow themselves some discomfort for the benefit of someone else. One should subject themselves even to some minor pain, minor inconvenience, just to provide for another the comfort, the hope, the certainty that one may need. This is a tremendous lesson. This is the ultimate positive note. And indeed, yes, this was the conclusion. This is the conclusion of the book of Genesis that tell us that the ultimate positive hope. Joseph remained there constantly. They knew he is not buried because we are leaving here. And it's not just some kind of dream, some kind of pie in the sky idea. No, we're going to leave it. Through the thickest moment, the most difficult moment of the enslavement, they still had that hope. They knew Joseph is there, and we're going out with Joseph, with his remains. And that is the ultimate positive note to conclude with.